start.
Welcome to the Core Concepts Lectures. This is a program that's sponsored by One Community. This is the facility where we are in Memphis, Tennessee, and by the Institute of Applied Metaphysics. And here we invite religious, spiritual leaders, and sometimes irreligious people to come tell us what they believe, why they believe it, and what they're doing about it. In other words, how did they come to this belief system, and how's it manifesting in their lives? And today, our guest is Janice Mickle, and Janice comes to us from Nashville, Tennessee, and she has an interesting study and work that she's been doing with the Native American shaman. She has been designated a grandmother of the Lakota Council in one of the
It's Dakota.
Dakota Council. And so she's going to tell us a little bit about her work and her belief system. So welcome to Core Concepts.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Appreciate it. Well, nice to be with each of you. I guess I could start at the beginning of how I got onto this shamanic path and perhaps even give a definition of shamanism, if you'd like that. For me, shamanism, what it means to me after practicing it since really about 95, I think it's 1995 is when I started as a shamanic practitioner. Shamanism to me is the belief system that we are all connected to everyone, everything. So, and the word shaman comes from the Tungus tribe in Siberia, and it means to see in the dark or see with the heart. So, and one of the reasons for seeing in the dark is when you're doing shamanic journeys that you connect into the mystical realms, you typically cover your eyes so that you can be open to what you see there and not be distracted by this dimension here that we live in. So, shamanism is the belief that we are all connected and we are all spiritual in our composition, that we are made of spirit, and of course in the human experience we are also made with emotions and feelings and our mind as well as our bodies, but also a connection to something greater than us if we found that. So for me, I was raised in a small country Baptist church, which had some beautiful gifts for me. Wonderful singing. They were all gospel singers. Oh my. And the sense of community was awesome. Just family. You know, it was all family. So that was important. And I grew up on a farm in Middle Tennessee, in Portland, Tennessee. And I am grateful for the experience to be with nature, because that's a part of shamanism also. We're connected to everything, so we want to be able to connect with all the plants, the animals, the stones. I say the stone people are the oldest people on the planet. They are the ones that record all the history. They know everything that's happened here. The tree people are called the tall standing people. They are the ones that have been here a long time as well, and they protect us and provide with the plant kingdom oxygen for us to live from. The finned ones that are in the ocean, from the whales and the dolphins, whom we've learned so much about in the last few years, remembering who they are great, great communicators. The raptors, the eagles, down to the smallest little chickadee. They're all beautiful, and they all have that connection. And then we also have, the four-legged. Those four-legged beings that we care for and have dominion over. I really believe they're here to show us unconditional love, how to love unconditionally as our Creator loves us. And then we also have, in the shamanic world, connecting to everything, we have the furred ones, so, the bears, the lions, and all of these are archetypal energies in shamanic terms. So they represent, so if we talk about the white Arctic wolf, it is a representative of olive wolf, and they are all healers. All the animals are healers. If you've ever had a close connection with the four-legged, whether they be horses, dogs, cats, if you've ever had a connection with them, you'll know that they are healers. If you ever notice their masters are ever sick, they'll go and lie next to them, and they'll pull energy, and sometimes they'll take an illness on to keep their owner from having to take it. So they're quite remarkable. So what these indigenous peoples that are on every continent that's inhabited on the planet, they've been here since the beginning of time. And what they have done is hold sacred these knowings for us until this time. And they're getting ready to exit the planets, these elders that have been around so long, and it's for us to take it on now. So it's the wake-up time for all of us in the human race. It's the time to stop destroying our beautiful earth that is here for us to enjoy, yes, but to also take good care of. Some of the native elders that I work with say that her hair's been torn and pulled out, and her body's been hurt and damaged, and we are to work at rectifying that and making decisions that are sound for not only us and Mother Earth, but for those that will come after us, the 7th generation and beyond. So that is a big part of shamanism, is to know that connection to everything that is. And it's a spiritual connection as well as the other areas that I mentioned. So to start with, I was raised in this small Baptist church. I finished college and went to work. I worked in customer service management and then worked in sales and did very well in sales. And I think it was because I love people and I liked helping my customers. And so, but I had some of that ego stuff, like, well, I want to beat the rest of them though while I'm doing it. You know, I'll be number one. And I did do that. I did excel in it. But then as I moved into my spiritual journey, I realized that was not the best way to be. The good things can still come to you in great abundance, but we don't have to compete to do it. We just have to be our best, and then it will all work out. There was an event in my life in '94 that happened. My oldest brother, only brother, his name is Harley, he had colon cancer and was diagnosed only 6 weeks before he had surgery. He'd not been feeling well that year before or whatever. He just couldn't put his finger on it. He said, you know, I was just a macho guy and wouldn't go to the doctor to see what was going on. And he found he had blockages and he had colon cancer. So he went in for surgery, and it had already metastasized, and he lasted 10 days from that point, begging for something to help him. He didn't want to, leave at that point. But then he shifted in that process. And so he gave me a great example of how to leave this world. His concern was for us, not for himself. So let's fast forward about 6 weeks. I went out west to do business work in corporate America, and I went to visit my friend Carol, and we had worked together in Nashville. We had executive suite offices next to each other when we were both in sales, so we were good friends. And she'd moved back to California. But she was originally from a little town called Fancy Farm in Kentucky, so, here we had these farm backgrounds, so we connected there. And I went to see her the weekend before I started on my business meeting the next week. And she lived in Orange County. And she said, do you want me to do, she said, I've been doing these journeys, these shamanic journeys. I'm taking classes from the Foundation for Shamanic Studies. And she said, really, I've learned to do these journeys into the mystical realms. And do you want me to go check on your brother and see what's going on with him since he's passed over? Because, we spent the afternoon talking, and I cried a little and shared. And I said, no, I know he's okay. He had a good passing. He was at peace when he passed. So I said, I have a question that's been burning inside of me all of my life. And that is, what is my soul's purpose this lifetime? What am I to do? And she went, oh, great, give me an easy one. And Carol became my teacher My teacher of shamanism, she went through all the advanced courses. She went through and taught me Reiki. That was my first exposure to that. She opened me up to so much, so I really want to give her some great credit there. Her name is Carol Faulkner Swim. And what happened in that journey is that things happened that I knew that the helping spirits that were there, the spiritual guides, knew me better than Carol did or anyone else because of the answers that came. And I got an answer, but it was something that I've been sitting with since that time and working with, but just now beginning to feel like I realize it. So some things that I learned from that shamanic journey, and also when I learned to do it, and I teach it as well, is that you can get a meaning that's true at that time, and a few years down the road, if you taped it or you go back and look at your notes, you'll see a whole new meaning to it that you missed before. So there's different layers and aspects to all of this work. When you hear of shamanic work, usually you think about the real shamans, I think of, that are in the jungles, on the reservations. They're doing their work quietly for their tribe or their people. And if you happen to find them and they are guided, or they may find you. I had a friend that was found in Albertson's grocery store, and this shaman had walked in. He was out in New Mexico, which kind of helped to be close. But this man came up to him and said, you're the one that needs healing. And he took him back and did some work, and sure enough, he was the one that needed healing. So that was great. But it started me on this path of shamanism. Now, when I first started holding classes, or I invited Carol, my friend, in to do classes, I couldn't find any of my friends that really understood that wanted to go. So, man, we'd find them from somewhere, Somebody would come from another state or wherever. And we started with it. And things started shifting and happening for me. One thing that happened is that in talking to my mother and dad about what happened, they understood. And I was kind of surprised from my Baptist upbringing. And Mom was raised in a Church of Christ denomination also. So that was a little more stricter, I think, than my dad's was. And I still have a lot of family that are of that faith. So I don't want to take anything away from it, because everybody's where they need to be. But they knew there was more than religion to life. And I was washing dishes with Mom and talking about a Reiki session, a Reiki experience. It was, I was going through the training, and we did shamanic journeys to be able to connect with the actual symbols and where did it begin. We found all that information out, and then we'd read the book, So it's so much better that way. And what we did is I was talking about one of those experiences, because this was right after my brother passed, and he was present spiritually in every initiation that I had. And I remember one time I was crying so much. It was one of the early ones, and he stepped outside of the circle. So, but I was talking to Mom, and she said, did you know your grandmother was a healer? And I went, Grandma? She said, yes. And there were 8 children in their family. Mom was the youngest. I knew my grandfather was an herbalist, because you saw the big, it was a big medicine cabinet, took up most of the wall from ceiling to floor, and about 4 feet wide, filled with herbs. And he would gather herbs all the time. She said, yes, she was a healer. She said, when your dad was in Oak Ridge and working, your brother, who was the only child we had at the time, we went to stay with my parents. And she said while we were there, they had the wood stove in the living room, and my brother, Harley, fell into it hands first, burned him really badly. And Grandma said, give him to me. She took him back to the back of the house. And Mom said she knew that she would always open the Bible and would read something, and then she would do whatever she was doing. He came back, nothing on his hands, as though it never happened. So she said she was a healer. And I said, wow, we never knew that. She said, well, back then, if we talked about it, people would think we were trafficking with the devil, so you just didn't tell anybody. Well, then I found out later that Grandma had Cherokee lineage. She was a quarter, I parents. No, she was half quarter. Her grandparent was a full-blooded. So she, I think, may have received some of that. My guess would be from them. But Mom said it went from one generation to another. So anyway, this was my entree into shamanism. So here I go. Okay, got a little lineage going on back here. And I also talked to my mom's older sister, Aunt Ruby, who was 101 when she passed. And this was in her 90s, I know, or late 80s. And she said when she was a little girl that she remembered people riding to their home on horseback to be healed of scarlet fever. And they would come, and my grandfather and grandmother would work with them, and they would be healed. So that's an amazing story. So what a history I had that I never knew about. If I'd never taken the classes, you know, I wouldn't have known all that probably. So that's how I started. And my path with this shamanism was from Michael Harner's Foundation for Shamanic Studies, is where my teacher had studied. And what he did, he was an anthropologist. He was from Carnegie Mellon. Very bright man, and he studied with the Canuba Indians in South America. And of course they do use some hallucinogenic drugs sometimes to, I think, help you drop the physical and the ego to just be able to connect directly with spirit. But you have to be trained to do that. Yeah. Michael decided if he brought it to the U.S. there'd be no drug use and there would be no cultural overlay. He wanted, because all the cultures were different, but they had one thing in common, and they had a sonic driver that took them on these journeys into the mystical realms. And the common one that they had on all continents was a drum. You could use a rattle, you could use a didgeridoo, you could use singing bowls as in Tibet. They all work. You could use bells, but it would take you to those mystical realms. And so we learned that in this way that we would teach it without the cultural overlay. We would teach people to set sacred space, they could call in directions how they wanted to do and connect themselves, and we would not have the cultural overlay. Now to me, that stripped a lot away, but it left the core essence, and so it was called core shamanism, so you got the basics, right? Because our culture didn't support spiritual processes, at least in my environment growing up. We had religious environments that had moments of spirituality, it seemed like. And when I'm saying spiritual, I mean one-on-one connection with Creator, you know? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong. Jesus shows up. He's a great friend of mine. He shows up too. But so does Buddha. And, you know, we're all connected. So you can't, you know, if we put blinders on, we limit ourselves and our experiences. And what I soon learned is what I know is what I've experienced. And so that's what I can share with you today, is what I've experienced. And so that is how I moved into shamanism. That is a brief description of shaman and shamanism. I would never call myself a shaman. I was taught that shaman was a term of respect that you gave to someone who had done good work for you, gotten good results. And it would be arrogant to call yourself a shaman. And so I notice when people do that, and I go, there might be some ego there. And I do know that the Native Americans that I know will not go to someone that calls himself a shaman. You already know who it is, you know, or you'll be guided to them. It'll just happen. And part of the journey is in finding them sometimes. If you have to find them in the jungle and go through some fear to get there and look at some of your fears and move through them, that's part of the healing, I've learned. So, never would call myself that. I have had clients that have called me that, and I say thank you, but I would not advertise myself. Oh, here comes a shaman, or I'm a shaman. It doesn't mean that you don't do the work, but it means that you respect it, and it's something that's sacred. And I know in other cultures, for example in South America, if you don't call yourself a shaman, the people won't go to you. So you know, it depends on where you are. But in our country, for me, I teach my students, you're a shamanic practitioner. That's what I am. So that's where I am with all that. You know, I think it's called for some humbleness You have to have confidence to work with the helping spirits and to face our shadow. You know, my dad had Alzheimer's. He passed at the age of 90 on January 1st, 2009. But in his last year of life, he told me, he said, you know what I've learned? It's all good, honey. Everything that happens to us is good. And I have learned that that is true. If we have challenges or experiences that are challenging and you think, how am I going to get through it? And you pray to get through it. And you know, maybe you've been wrapped in the arms of an angel or a light being or the Creator, that, or an ascended master that's there holding you as you get through that tough time. Remember the poem about the footprints in the sand?
Yeah.
All right. So we're being carried at times. And it's in those times later that we see how much we grew. We expanded our sense of being, our consciousness. Each time we experienced something that was tough or difficult, we really grew from it. It doesn't mean we have to suffer to grow, though. We can ask for our lessons to be given to us gently. But we may have a contract that out trumps that. I believe when we come here, and the reason I believe it is through experience of working with people, that we have contracted for things that we want to learn, our soul wants to learn while we're here in this earth journey. So what we do is we may go through some things that we contracted to do, and it would be to help us and others around us. So I think my brother contracted to die at 50 because our whole family grew from that. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, yes, do you have a question?
So, when we make these contracts, we're obviously not in this world, right?
Right. I wonder what I was smoking on the other side.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
So then that means that when we fulfill our contract, if we fulfill our contract, then we go back, or we have to, if we don't fulfill it, we what?
Well, my opinion is if you made a contract with God, you're not getting that out unless you fulfill it.
Oh,
if you don't, you're going to come back because you have to fulfill the contract that you make, a sacred contract with the Creator. Now, people may not believe in reincarnation. I think a lot of us do. Here's what I know. Look at it this way. If we're even just talking about multiple lifetimes, if we draw a line here, can you see that imaginary line I'm drawing here? And we mark off each lifetime like this, all right? They're all happening at the same time because the spiritual world and realm is all now.
Right.
It's like time is splatted out. And we have a linear view here just in the earth plane, all right? So we're going from one lifetime to another. Now, if you can't believe in that concept of reincarnation, what you can know is that all the memories of your ancestors is within you. Everything is in your DNA. Every experience, every memory is within us. I know that. I've seen it shift in people. I know it. So you know it because you experience it. So what I say is, and you hear of maybe people doing dimension hopping or shifting. If you've got this timeline, you know, you can move from one place to the other, move in and out of time in the future and in the past. And the shamans and shamanic practitioners know how to do that. You're outside of the time that's here, time and space. And so you can move forward and backward.
Okay, there was a movie I called The Jumpers.
Yeah.
That depicted just that. This guy was just so powerful. He could just, okay, I'm going to go.
I hope I answered your question. But
You did.
if you don't, what happens though, if you completed that, I believe there are many souls or aspects of souls. I think it's just a piece of us that's here. It's not the whole being. I think our higher self's on the other side, helping us while we're here. And the higher self is the God part of us, and we bring an aspect of that in with us, but we also bring in to a planet of free will what we will experience. And it's mostly from our thoughts and choices unless you have a contract there. And I think the contract trumps everything else.
So how do you find out what your contract is?
You can
just
ask.
kinda know it?
You can ask. You can do a journey and ask. You can be taken to the time where you met with your council of wise ones that help you decide this. it's not something they push on you, you agree to it. That's why I said, what was I smoking?
Okay.
Okay, yeah, there you go. So, anyway, that's how I got to here. I also had some experience with South American shamanism, and that was in the work of Alberto Villoldo, who was an anthropologist also that worked with Peruvian shamans, and these were the high Andes Incan shamans that survived the conquistadors from Spain and held sacred all these rites. Oh my, beautiful people. And they held these rites. Mune Ki means be as thou art or I love you. And these were rites that they had held sacred and only gave to their proteges or those that they were working with, perhaps once a year or every few years, and there were 7 of them. In 2006 they received another one, in 2007, I think it was 2007, they received the 9th rite, and they were told to take them out to the people on the planet. So Alberto began that process by bringing the shamans to the U.S., and they started there. And believe it or not, my teacher, Carol, called me and said, they're here, can you go with me? And I couldn't because of my parents. They were both ill, and I needed to be with them. So she went, and then she comes back, and I said, well, you need to come here and teach us in Nashville. And she goes, I think you're supposed to come here. This is another little story if y'all want to hear it. And so I said, well, let me be with it. And I was supposed to go on vacation with some of my girlfriends. There were 4 of us going, and we had planned to go north into the wine country north of San Francisco. And one of our friends had won this customer service award. She was a director of customer service, but she got Employee of the Year, and she got to pick her vacation spot anywhere she wanted to go. So a few minutes after I hung up talking to Carol about these rites and her coming here and me going there to learn them, the phone rings, and it's the friend, Becky, and she says, they're all booked up, we can't get a hotel up there. She said, but I found one on Dana Point Beach in Orange County. Is that all right with you? And I said, love the beach, great, that's fine. I called Carol back and I said, it's in Orange County. Now remember, Carol lives in Orange County. I called Carol back and I said, Carol, how far are you from Dana Point? She said, it's 20 minutes from my front door now. In Orange County, that's real close. You could almost, drive there in a short amount of time. So I went, it looks like I'm coming there. Well, I was to meet this other person. Her name is Rosanna. And Rosanna lives in Mayfield, which was close to Fancy Farm, and they knew each other. So I met Rosanna at the airport, and we both walked up to the gate, and we went, I know you. And we took the rides together, which was a lot to do in 4 days. It was a 4-day weekend, and we completed those. And the last thing that we did, Carol asked us to do a journey to see how we were to use these rites, these ancient rites. So what I saw me in front of the group speaking about it, and then I heard you were to take these back to your community and teach them. And Rosanna got the same thing, so we did it together. And we did, in about 2 years, we did about 200 people in Middle Tennessee and southwestern Kentucky, and helped them learn these ancient rites. And it was joyful. It was just complete joy to do that.
I have a question.
Yes.
Does anyone ever get an instruction or message that is other than spread the word?
Yes. Sometimes
Can you
it's
give
keep
me
your
an
mouth
example?
shut. They're not, sometimes I get they're not ready, and meet them where they are. You don't want to scare them off. And sometimes when you get all these spiritual experiences, you're just so excited. You just want to spread the information and let as many people know. But sometimes you can turn somebody off by saying too much or push too hard.
Is there, can you answer the question?
Can you answer the question? What do you mean?
Can you give me an example of some sort of mission or instruction other than spread the knowledge of this experience? Other than proselytize? Is there ever, have you ever run into anything that's like slightly more direct or concrete? Or
the best thing you can do, best thing beyond what we're doing today, talking, sharing, talking about experiences, is being it. You are the light. Once you've had these experiences and you are holding light, you can affect a room by walking into it. You can affect a room by saying a silent prayer. You can affect a room by just being who you are, connected to source energy. That is the most powerful thing you can do. Because I believe we're not here to save the world. We're here to save ourselves first. And when we take care of us and heal us, we bring everybody up with us because we're all connected. So if everybody just only stood with their own selves and healed me, and knowing that when I do that, I bring the whole planet up, then if we can do that, that's the most important thing we're here to do.
What's the source of the sickness, disease, pain that needs healing? If everyone is suffering, and everyone needs sort of like the same yet different prescription, then whence the disease?
Disease, to me, look at the word.
Yeah, whence the dis-ease?
The dis-ease is when our four bodies are not in balance. And we have four bodies. We have the physical. Next to it is the emotional, where the feelings are. Next to it is the mental and the thoughts. And outside of that is the spiritual. And if you have disease, it has entered at one of those levels. And to heal the disease, you must heal it one level out. So if it started in the emotional area, I have to at least heal it at the thought level. But if you want to heal all of them, you start at the spiritual level and move all the way through.
What is the root of disease? Etiology.
It is when we are not in alignment with our balanced true selves, which is love and light.
What brings that about? What brings about the separation from love and light and true self?
It was a choice we made many.
So it's sort of like a doctrine of original sin kind of thing?
No,
or
we chose it, and some of it was forced upon us, I believe, but I don't want to get into semantics here. You have your own path, and you're asking me my questions about how I feel, so all I can explain is what I know from my experience, what I know from being here, what I know from working with clients, what I know from being around other beings of light that hold great light. When I'm around some of these elders in these North American tribes, you can feel it before you even get to the location. You can feel their presence. When you work with that and you have your own experiences, then you start to know. And it's good to question, it's good to ask questions, but I feel a little bit of maybe a little testing there. So all I can tell you is what I know, and I don't put myself out as an expert. I was invited here to share based on my experiences of what I believe. So I'm just answering you from that perspective.
Coming from my experience,
Yes, Jim.
I'd like to see if that answers his question and if it is, get your comments on it. I see fear as the opposite of love.
Yes, I do too.
And when we experience fear, it's paralyzing.
Yes, it is.
And people who have bad emotional experience, or even sometimes an experience that they're not even aware of it, but it does affect them physically.
Yes, it does.
And you cannot heal one aspect without healing the whole.
That's right.
And I mean, if I were going to say something is the great Satan, I'd say it's fear.
I think so too. I think there is some genetic setup too, in answer to your question. I think in our DNA we do have, like, there's cancer in my family. My mom had it, my brother had it, my sister had it, my aunts had it, my grandmother had it. So there is some DNA connection there, but we can shift that. On a spiritual level, we can shift it. I've seen it happen. So it is. I think fear fear separates us from each other and from source energy. And that's where the fall happened. Everyone's heard about Atlantis in that time. When it started, there was some breakdown, I think, in Lemuria, and in Atlantis, it was 200,000 years were there, 195,000 were great. The last 5,000, we lost it. All right? So that's when the fall happened. And it was the time of the flood. That was another time that was the flood time. You know, that's in the Bible, same time to me. In my mind, it's the same. Because what we're...
So you're positing some sort of temporal disconnection from the Creator?
Yes.
Some sort of rift which
And it
has
was
to
a
be
choice.
overcome?
It was a choice.
Which was a conscious choice on the part of humanity as a collective whole,
Yes.
you're saying?
It
And
could be.
at the individual level, you're saying?
Could be. I don't think everyone agreed with it. And I don't think it necessarily was a choice. I think some of it was forced and we didn't know we were being entrapped. It's part of it too.
I don't think we can be separated from
Yeah.
God.
It's an illusion. Yeah.
It's a bit of ego on our part to even think we could be separated from
Right.
God. We live, move, and have our being in God. God dwells in man. But it's our perception
Right.
that where we take off and get into real fears when we think we can be separated.
Right. And really we can't. And when I said that thing of time, if you ever studied A Course in Miracles, you know that's another pathway. But if you look at that, that's where the time splatted out when we thought we separated. But what we're finding out is that it's just a big illusion, and we're already there. We all have always been there. But now, as far as disease, you may have contracted for disease, as we said too, because that can help yourself and other souls grow while you're here. But I do think most of it is caused, I'd say a majority, some from DNA, but I think the majority happens from stress and not living a balanced way. Stress is a big, big, big factor in disease. It really is.
Don't we always need catalyst?
Oh,
There's this constant, you can describe it as whatever you want, but basically, to move, we need the catalyst.
Right. And it's through disease that we also find our path back sometimes. You know, we feel so close then that we realize we never were separated. But I don't know if I answered your question. Did I answer your question?
I think you answered it.
Well, if you don't feel it is.
I don't want to pursue it.
Huh?
I don't want to pursue it.
Okay.
Just
That's
continue.
important.
Yeah, well, it could take a lot of time, and I wanted to share about the North American traditions that I have. So I apologize if you felt that I was not.
I'm not offended at all.
Okay.
Please,
But I really.
please likewise don't be.
I'm not. I just don't want to cause you to feel that you were not heard. I did hear you, I think. I heard you. You were heard.
Do you believe that you choose disease, stress, catastrophes because you want to do something? I mean, that you have these choices and you choose them.
I think, often catastrophes, I think there are probably some exceptions, but I think you contracted for it.
You're not contract, and that's like semantics again. Contract is not choosing, really. What I'm saying is that you see ahead of you, because we have in us past, present, and we also have future, and we know it. So then we choose things because, okay, we need to do something, and this is a choice, so I'll take it.
I think it's in your area of free will that yes, you can do that. I do.
Or do you think that one does it? Or people do it in general? No.
Do you know, I can't answer that for them. I can just say what I've observed or what I feel from my own experience. I think, for example, with my mother, when my dad passed, she didn't want to be here. And my nephew, her oldest son, the son that she lost to cancer, his son, had lung cancer. And I said, Mom, do you want to stay and help him because you beat cancer years ago? She had melanoma when I was about a year old. And I asked her, they had surgery and aspirin, that's all they had. And I said, how did you do it? And she said, I had a little talk with God. And I said, I got 3 children to raise and this just won't do. She said, that's how I was healed.
Wow. So she chose this work.
So she stayed and when she completed
chose
that,
stress.
and there was healing with my sister, a daughter, then when that was done, 2 months later, she left. So we choose, I think. But I think we choose from our higher perspective, usually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What is the rational driver behind his choice to contract for catastrophe?
You know, it could be I think that it's for the higher good when you do that. I think that's probably the only reason why you would want to do that. There may be multiple reasons, but.
So there's some sort of higher level system in place wherein the individual is somehow rationally incented to contract for catastrophe for the good of the whole or collective.
I think that happens, yes.
Or the immediate community.
It could be,
Generally, things are done for the immediate community.
like the
the person.
children in Colorado.
So that's
I mean,
sort of
Connecticut.
born to martyr the children in.
In Connecticut, I believe they contracted, is my opinion,
Yeah.
you know,
Contracted to
to die in that situation, to leave the planet that way.
for
The learning experience.
For experiences of the other people on the planet. In the U.S., we got a big jolt from that, most people did, that these little innocent kindergartners, first graders,
That's incredible.
yeah, so, you know,
Incredible.
yeah.
Oh, that was incredible.
my. So you think the creator is
I think the Creator leaves it to our free will. I don't,
Yeah,
that's what I think.
yeah, it's out there, and you just pull on side, okay, I'll take this.
We could dig down into a lot of,
Yes, I think I dug far enough with that one.
Okay.
That's a bit deep.
Thank you.
But I was thinking along the lines as he was sharing his concerns that the contract kind of makes sense because what if you reincarnated because of some bad deed that you did and you really needed to kind of make up for that?
Right, and I think that kind of deals with the karma, dharma wheel that the Buddhist and those traditions follow too. That if we created it, then it's sitting there and we need to resolve it.
Are there any people in shamans in Memphis that are teaching classes that are?
Do you know, it's interesting you asked that. I had a connection with the Heart Center that brought me here, and I have 2 other friends that either work here or live here too, and I've met several others. So there's quite a network of practitioners here in the Memphis area that are doing a lot of different things, but doing good work. This was another thing that happened. I had received messages from White Buffalo Calf Woman to do some work, and these happened in various ways. But I was then guided to do some gatherings to teach her ancient ways and to just let people gather and know those. And when I received that information, I was shown to do it in 4 different areas around Nashville, outside of Nashville. So, but it made a medicine wheel, if you will. And when I did those, I thought I was complete, and I got a message to do one in Memphis, and it wasn't one of the 4 original that I did. So I called my friends that work here and live here. I think I called 3, none of them returned my call, and that was not like them. 'Cause, you know, we usually would talk or know each other, or I'd hosted them in my home doing work. And they took the, so I went to Sundance with this Lakota tribe, and while I was there, I met a woman from Memphis, and her name was Jane Abraham, and she was there with another friend, and she has the Heart Center, which does work for addiction recovery. And I was guided to call her, so I did. And as soon as I did, and I told her about the White Buffalo Calf Woman Gathering, she said, "Stop, I know it's supposed to be here." And I sent her a flyer that I made up, and it had a picture of White Buffalo Calf Woman, and I guess our confirming point was that she said she had a magnet on her refrigerator with the exact same picture. So I did the gathering here, and in fact, when I came to do it, there were 2 people signed up, and I went, well, if there are 2 or more gathered, I'm going. So I got in the car and drove over, and when I got there, Jane said, the phone's been ringing off the wall, I think we're going to have about a dozen here. And when we started, there were 17 people there. So see, you never know. When we finished that, and I was,
Yes.
yeah, she was there, and that's how we connected. And so then from that, we went to I was talking with my friend Shiloh, who was living in Massachusetts at that time. And I told her about Jane and doing the gathering there. And she went, I'm getting a hit on this. There's something going on. I don't know what it is. So we just kind of let it sit. And then I was talking with Jane, and I mentioned Shiloh. And she said, I'm getting a hit on that. This woman, what is this? I said, I don't know. I'm going to put the 2 of you together. And so by email, I introduced them. Well, it turns out that Shiloh, of course, is a therapist. She's has her degree, but she needed the hours to get her license. And she'd just gone through a divorce. Her college son had gone off to college, the last one at home, and so she was guided in early December to send Jane an email saying, here's my resume, here's what I'd like to do. Are there any openings there? I feel this connection. And Jane said, well, you know, we have an intern and she's leaving in August. Let's just let it rest and we'll see what happens. 4 hours later, Jane calls Shiloh and says, the girl that's the intern just turned in her notice, her resignation. She's leaving the 1st of January, so Shiloh came and interviewed and went to work and moved the end of December. So there you go. So you just, you just kind of follow. And so what I'll answer is, I know she is a shamanic practitioner and she's in Memphis. And there are probably others that I don't know so much about, but I don't know of anyone actually teaching it.
And I can contact her through the Heart Center?
Through the Heart Center. Yes.
Won't you get a cardiologist? You might get a cardiologist if you look up the Heart Center. So this lady's name is Jane Alexander. You have to have her name.
Abraham.
Jane
Abraham.
Abraham is her
Oh.
name.
She's on Madison, right where the trolley stops.
1384 Madison.
Okay, I know.
And you can't miss the building on the west side of the wall is a painting.
1384.
It's a big painting done by Kevin Hutchins, Kevin Chasen Wolf.
Who's a wonderful, he's probably a shamanic practitioner.
And he
I
has,
guess would be.
he has been on the core concepts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would guess he
but
would
it's
be.
1384
Yes.
Madison.
Okay.
And they've got a web page and it's Heart Center, H-A-R-T.
Yes.
For healing arts, research, and training
Okay.
center. And the Memphis Flyer a week ago had an article in there about the work they're doing there through the treatment of drug court-ordered offenders.
Huge success because they're 100% holistic, which I find is amazing. They have acupuncture, massage therapy, now shamanism, they have the whole gamut. And even in smoking cessation, just quickly, she said by using holistic, they had 84% non-relapse. They didn't fall back into it. And
Using
then
acupuncture.
using those methods, and then if they didn't, it was only 17% that did not have a relapse.
Yeah.
So,
And the drug court here is only ordering their clients to go to treatment centers that use the holistic methods.
That's amazing, I
because of
think,
the statistics.
that she has been able to provide, yeah. Isn't that
Yeah.
wonderful? So, it's happening in different places. Do you still have a question? Did we answer that?
I'm thinking, do I have a question?
Looks like you did.
Yeah, I think I do have a question. I was thinking of Jim mentioning fear, and I think anger is impetus to change. Although some people die with the same anger they carry all the way.
I think that anger is a byproduct of the fear.
I think
Well,
it's
I
connected.
think anger is reverse of fear, almost. But when there are a lot of things that I've seen of people who are brilliant and everything, and sometimes their brilliance takes them down paths where they become unresolved, and then there's anger. So it's interesting what happened. Of course, I don't think I contracted on anything. I would have said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to contract on that.
But I feel like, you're whole, you're complete when you go back, you're in your full
Yeah.
God presence, your
Yeah.
Goddess presence.
I would like for you to provide for viewers of the any of your contact information.
Sure, I'd be
Could you
happy
do
to
that?
do
And
that,
then-
Jen.
and-
Where are we on time?
We have about 7 or 8 more minutes. I wanted to talk about, for instance, the gentleman that was here and left. As long as duality, this is the biggest single problem. I've written whole articles on it and things on duality, and I'm maybe standing a little close there, but maybe you could comment on this. As long as we have the idea of God out there somewhere, and then us down here somewhere, or we have the idea of the devil and his demonic forces here, and God and his angelic angels over here in this giant battle for the hearts and minds of man, which is really a concept that comes from Zoroastrianism, and then it's kind of gone from there into Judaism and into Christianity. And I just wondered what your thoughts were on that in terms of what has been told to you by your shaman teachers and so forth.
Well, I may have heard it from them, but where I learned it was through experience. I think it's all within ourselves.
The
Everything.
microcosm.
We're the microcosm of everything that's outside of us. We are the good, bad, beautiful, ugly. That is who we are, and that's what is so amazing about the earth experience when we're here, is that we have free will to choose any way we want to go, anywhere we want to go, to make whatever decisions we want to make. And I think it's all within us. And when we master, that's what I was saying before, when we heal ourselves or master ourselves, our thoughts, our actions, then we are going to transcend the limitations that we may experience here. That's what I think.
Go ahead and give your email or website or whatever.
Okay, I don't have a website up, but I do have email. It's Janice Mickle. My email address is Janice, Janice, Mickle, M as in Mary, ICKLE, 0512 at gmail.com. That's my email address, and my phone number is 615-830-1512.
If there's any question, go ahead and give Janice your question now. Otherwise, we'll give her a moment to wind up her final message here.
Okay, and we didn't even get to the North American shamans today. But that's okay. They'll get there.
When someone you know I've been speaking about says they've got a hit, what do you mean? Describe that. I don't know what
To
that
me,
means.
I know her well enough, Shyla,
Yeah.
when she said that she was like, it was a spiritual message coming in, pay attention.
She felt
Right.
she had chills because I go to see my friend whose husband died, and I know when he's there, I get chills.
Right. It may be different for each person. She may get chills, you get chills, she might get tingles up her spine, the hair may stand up on the back of your head.
Yeah, that's what you mean by it.
Right, that's what I meant by
Okay, some
hit,
kind of
a
physical
spiritual hit.
reaction.
And you have a knowing that it's, and it could just be a knowing in your heart. You don't have to have a physical reaction. It could just be knowing, yes.
You made reference to, in the very beginning, to the stones, the trees, the and an eagle, whole gamut of creation. And I thought I heard you make reference to them as people.
Yes,
No.
because they are, at some point, I think we got the idea that we had dominion over them. And I think we're equal to them. And sometimes we're not up to their standards. So, I was calling them my brothers and sisters. That's really what I meant by that. That they are living beings. Everything that has been created, I believe, has energy. And so that means you can hear a stone talk if you're in a transcendent state. You can talk to them. You can listen to the wind. The elements work with us. Air, water, fire through the sun, and the element of actual fire here, and the earth itself, not Mother Earth, that's a being, but the element of earth. And the additional one is ether or spirit. So when we set sacred space, and sacred means to set apart, when we do that, we're invoking the archetypal energies that I spoke of before, but we're also invoking all the elements, all that is. And we're invoking the Creator and all that's connected to the Creator. So, and there are traditions on each indigenous group. In North America, there's over 500 North American nations. It's called Turtle Island. And meeting this chief, Golden Light Eagle from the Dakota, he's a Yankton Sioux chief. His mission is to help people to wake up to the fact that there are laws embedded in our DNA, in the dormant part, that are Creator's laws, that came straight from the heart of Creator, not from someone else. And so that's his work, and that was one thing I wanted to share with you all today, but we didn't get there, but maybe it was meant for another time then.
Yeah.
But what I've learned from them is that everything is alive. Everything has energy. Everything has purpose. And when we work in concert with nature and all the beings that are around us, plant, animal, fish, all of it, stones, then when we do that, then we are in balance. And then we don't desecrate our mother, the earth.
Great.
I'd like to thank you for viewing Janice Mickle, this particular show of Core Concepts, and invite you to go look at others who have been guests on Core Concepts. I think in one particular area you may not find such a variety and of such interesting lectures on people's core concepts, their beliefs, why they came to believe what they believe, and what they're doing about it, how it's manifesting in their lives. I want to thank our guest, Janice, and all of you for being here and asking questions, and we appreciate you viewing us. My name is James Renford Powell, and this is Core Concepts.
Thank you.